everyone. I hope you're having a good night. Okay, so today I wanted to try doing something a little different. I wanted to do this little thing that I was inspired by watching another YouTuber do something similar to it, and that I'm a huge fan of movies, and I really do like drawing, so I figured since I want to get better at it, why not kind of combine the two, or just like doing like any art thing in general, like 3D modeling or just like drawing or animating and stuff. So I figured I could combine my interest in drawing along with my like interest in movies, be it animated or or live action, just something like that. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be drawing something while reviewing a movie that I actually have liked, or it can be one that I dislike, just anything that pops in my head and anything that I find kind of interesting. So today we're going to be seeing me draw a character named Dante, one that I made for a certain series that I'm working on. And if anyone happens to follow my channel, you all know which one it is, even though I haven't been working on it in a while because of school and being a senior in college, and whoo, lordy, I've had so much to do. And I'm so tired, but I finally get to do this. I just want to get this off my chest, see how this goes, see if people like it, people don't like it. But, yeah, okay, so let's get to the nitty-gritty. So the film that we're going to be reviewing today is one of my favorite films. I figured I should start it off with something that's really familiar with my taste, as well as something that, since it is the start of 2020, I figured why not start off something that's similar to the Roaring Twenties, or something that has something to do with it. Since we are now in the futuristic Roaring Twenties, why not start off with a little bit of a retro film? So, the first film I'm going to be reviewing today is the 2005 remake of King Kong from Peter Jackson. Just to give a brief summary if you've never seen King Kong. King Kong is a film about, so it follows director Carl Denham, who is Jack Black, who is trying to travel to this place called Skull Island in order to film like this really important feature. However, he has like, a screenwriter, Jack Driscoll, which is played by Adrian Brody, and Ann Darrow, who is played by Naomi Watts. And they accompany him on this journey because he sort of like tricks them into going, kinda. But turns out that on this island there's like all this like weird stuff, like these giant mosquitoes, really big dinosaurs, and this really huge ape, which is technically our leading guy, King Kong, who the film is named after. But the thing is, it's like the whole world is sort of like, it's like you jumped inside of like a time traveling machine and went back to the prehistoric era. It's kind of trippy. But anyway, for those of you who know the story, you know the deal. A little white girl gets kidnapped by a big ass gorilla, gets captured, taken to New York City. He winds up screwing shit up just to find this one white girl, and then winds up getting like beating on his big old monkey chest and winds up falling down the Empire State Building after getting shot a bajillion times. You know that old story. So, yeah, that's pretty much the gist of King Kong. If you've seen the original, that's fine. If you haven't, it's okay too, because as someone who personally, I shouldn't say that. I have seen the original one. I saw it when I was really, really young, but to be honest, it kind of freaked me out. Mainly because I thought Kong kind of looked freaking ugly. I know for the time, like, I have a newfound respect for it, but for the time, it was just kind of weird seeing, like, this big, huge ape just, like, looking like he's possessed, just walking around in stop motion and, like, messing with stuff. It really just kind of creeped me out, but yeah, it's still a good movie. I respect it for what it was, even though it's not my favorite of them. But yeah, so let's get on to some of the you get the gist of the story. Let's get on to some of the pros. So I already mentioned that I thought the acting was really good. Jack Black. It's really nice. As someone who likes seeing Jack Black as a funny guy, but like I love when comedic actors do things like differently, like doing like dramatic stuff, because it really shows they have range. And Jack Black in this film is a good example of a comedic actor doing a dramatic performance and having range. He's actually a really good actor. I feel like he's kind of underrated, but I really loved him, especially in this film. He really stole the show for me. But speaking of acting, another person who I really feel like needs all the praise and deserves all of it is Andy Serkis, who is actually the motion capture person for Kong. You might know Andy Serkis as Claw from the Marvel films. Was it Claw? Was it? Hold up. Pretty sure that was him. Hold on, let me look this up. Yep, that was him. Ulysses Claw. He was in Age of Ultron, Black Panther. And he was also he is noticeable for being doing motion capture for monkeys. He's usually the person behind the VFX who really does the movements for them. He was also the motion capture for Caesar in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I believe so, yeah. Yep, he was Caesar. He was the motion capture for Caesar, the main chimpanzee. But yeah, he did the motion capture for Kong, and you can really see a lot of how much dedication there was in all of Kong's movements, because after looking at some actual movements of gorillas, he really nailed it. He did a good job there. Okay, so we got on the acting, and also one other person I gotta mention. I know a lot of people have been giving him slack, but I thought Adrien Brody was actually really good in this movie. I don't care what anyone says. I actually kind of like Adrien Brody. I thought his character was really good. His character is like a dry, sarcastic ass, but it works. It works. But speaking of dry and sarcasm, one thing I really liked about this film would probably have to be the combination between old and new kind of technology. And when I say old and new, it's set in the 1920s, and obviously, and they really do a good job of combining stuff from the original film into this new version. Because if you watch some of the scenes that they're actually filming, if I remember correctly, those when they're on the boat and you see Jack Black filming them, the lines that they're actually saying, if I remember correctly, were actually lines from the original King Kong. And I thought that was actually a really clever way to combine some of the old film into a new thing, so then it keeps it fresh. But also one thing I also found kind of cool was how it was able to pay homage to it. Especially during the T-Rex scene, because as I mentioned before, when I watched the original Kong, you notice him play with the little T-Rex mouth, and it looks kind of weird. But then when I saw it again on the 2005 Kong, after going back and looking at some scenes from there, it's actually a really, really neat way to say give it a little nod, yeah, we remember that. Speaking of nods, another thing I thought was great was the costume design and the mise-en-scene. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what the mise-en-scene is, it's basically everything inside of a scene, props, actors, costuming. I'm giving you guys a little film history here, so bear with me. Mise-en-scene is basically just anything, as I mentioned, it's anything that's in the scene. So speaking of the mise-en-scene, with the costume design in every scene, you could really get the feel that you're in the 1920s. It just has that feeling to it. You feel you're right there. You're there in that era at the time. I think the only other film I can think of, well, there have been a lot of films, but from what I can remember off the top of my head that I think does this too would be Chicago. It really has that. It nails the 1920s aesthetic. To a T. And so let's get on to that. Yeah, we got a costume design. Oh, another good thing I thought was cool was probably how fast the story really gets in motion. It starts off, at least when we really see New York, it starts off with Ann Darrow doing her little vaudeville thing, and then literally the next scene over, they're getting kicked out, and it's okay, plans in motion. Okay, now we see Ann's got problems. But then we turn to Jack Black, almost getting, about to get fired from the movie studio. And it's okay, he's got a problem. He's got to get out of here before the cops show up. But then we cut to, Adrien Brody's character, who for some reason, for the life of me, cannot remember. Hold on. What was his name? Why can't I remember his name? Jack Driscoll. Okay. Then we cut to Jack's character, and he's there waiting for Jack Black on the boat, trying to get off the boat because he's trying to get his money, but this ship sails, and I'm okay, start the conflict. Okay, boom, 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 we're there. It happened so fast, and I actually really appreciate it because I feel if this had been any other film, they would have kind of dragged it out a little more. But considering how much the King Kong story has, it makes sense why they why they wanted to push so fast to get to the conflict. Like, to be fair, some people might call that rushing a bit, and like the pacing problems, and I'll get to that in a bit. But like, I actually really appreciate it because there's so much other stuff that people are gonna be worrying about in this film. Okay, there's also a really good sense of atmosphere in this movie. Like, if anyone is supposed to feel like a jolly feeling, like, you feel it, you can tell, like, especially like in the beginning with the vaudeville scene, it's like kind of like, oh, it's kind of comedic, okay, we're getting a sense of that 1920s feeling. When they're on the island with like the native people, it feels scary. It feels like really frightening. It feels haunting. When you see Kong die at the end, you're like genuinely sad for this dang gorilla. Like, I hate monkeys, but this film really made me upset about Kong dying. It has a really good sense of atmosphere and mood, and I really commend the film for that. Let's see. Oh, speaking of the ending. The ending is one thing I really thought sold a lot better in this one than the original one, especially with the main character, because like for Ann Darrow, like one problem that I do remember having with the original one was that she didn't really do much. She just like kind of like sat there and just screamed the whole time, like, oh, help me, I'm a pretty white lady, help me. It's like, okay, girl, stop, shut up, you're making me deaf. But in this one, Ann Darrow is actually a really like optimistic character. Like, she actually has character. She's smart. Like, she uses her skills in vaudeville to sort of like mess with Kong at some point, and then she also uses it to entertain him. And one thing I really liked was that even though Kong is like this big 10-foot tall titan gorilla, he's like messing with her, and then she literally slaps him and is like, no! And like, I really love that part because it's like, wow, you got guts, holy snap. But then when like over time, when you see the two of them, her and Kong really developing their relationship, it really makes the whole film, it really sells. It's kind of silly to see this lady mess with like this huge gorilla, but it's actually kind of cute, and it really makes you feel upset regarding like what happens to Kong at the end. But yeah, it's kind of tragic, especially like when you literally see him just like slipping off the building and just like, no. You basically feel what she feels right there. So we've gotten on all that. One thing, and speaking of like the ending, in terms of like camera shots, actually just a whole nother thing entirely. But I think one other thing that really sells this film is the action. That was probably the main thing that pulled me in when I actually did see it. Especially, like, my favorite scene to this day is probably the moment where he fights the three, like, what are they, T-Rexes? What were those things called? Hold on. Oh, I thought it was a T-Rex. Turns out it's a V-Rex. It is, according to the wiki, a Bastasaurus rex, which is an extremely large species of theropod dinosaur that was found on Skull Island prior to its collapse. The animal is described in the book World of Kong, A Natural History of Skull Island. Holy shit, there's a book. But yeah, the fight scene between Kong and the three Bastasaurus rex is probably one of my favorite scenes in like, not just the whole movie, but probably film history in general. Like, I love the scene. The action's like really framed great, and you can see like everything that happens. And it's like there's not a shot that's like off or like off kilter in any bit. It's not like the Michael Bay Transformers movies, but like it's just like you can see everything. The camera work was really well done and really clean. And also the sound, something that people don't really mention, the sound direction was really good. In fact, I can see why so many people always use this as a textbook example for like sound design, because it's really good at it. Like, it's really good. I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in sound in some form or other, you don't even have to watch the whole movie, just watch that one scene and you're pretty much set for life. It sounds so amazing. You can hear like every snap, every bite, every punch, everything breaking. It's so good. So, let's see. Oh, and side note for things that are underappreciated. I know this is going to sound like sort of a weird thing, but this is like the film major in me talking. The color grading is so amazing. It's vibrant, but it still adds to the atmosphere and tone. It's perfect. It's something that, color grading is one of the things that I kind of pay attention to, even though I don't mean to. But like whenever I look at a film and it looks so like dingy and dry, it makes me bored. The more vibrant your film is, to me, it gives me all the more reason to actually watch it. I think that's probably one of the reasons why I don't really watch a lot of like stuff, like I'm really picky about my stuff, because if I find the color grading is off, it doesn't look that interesting to me. When it just looks like dull and dingy, I'm just like, it bores me, because I'm like, is there any fun in this life? I know it's not supposed to be fun, but like, yeah. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the music. I thought that the music is absolutely phenomenal, especially like the last track when Kong dies. I don't know why, but side note, I have like that song on my computer. Younger me for some reason saved it to my like other computer for some reason, and I can see why. It's so haunting, but it's so beautiful. It's probably one of my favorite tracks, if I'm being real. You know, the 'Twas Beauty That Kills the Beast thing. In a strange way, it makes me sad, but it also has like a bit of like a heroic feeling to it. I know I'm messed up in the head, but yeah. Okay, so that's all for the good things about the movie. And since I'm going to be a film critic, I have to be fair. Now we're going to get to some of the cons in this movie. And it's not easy for me to say this because I do like this movie, but I'm going to try to take off my bias glasses off as much as I can. So, one of the problems that I did have with this movie, and this is more of a nitpick. You can see there's some scenes that are obviously green screen, and it kind of looks a bit distracting, but not really. Like, you can tell they really saved, like, a lot of, like, the big effects for when they got on the island. So I kind of can't blame them. I kind of give it a pass because, like, you're not really supposed to, like, that's not really that important, but it's something that I did kind of notice. Some of that might just be age, because like the film did come out in 2005 and it's 2020 now. It's 15 years old, so it's understandable. And also one thing that as a writer this kind of bothered me, especially in the beginning, was there's some like expositional dialogue. Like I remember when like Andara was talking to the old guy and he said some stuff like, oh, people are always disappointing you, but you gotta look out for yourself. And, like, I get the point, I get what they're trying to make, but I feel like this film is 3 hours long. They could have at least showcased that a little more instead of telling us. Because I feel like it didn't really do us a service, gave us any service to, like, her character, you know? It just sort of was like, oh, so that's the type of person she is. Because I got the gist she's supposed to be, like, optimistic, but at the same time, it was just kind of like, it just felt kind of shoehorned in. And also, another thing I didn't like was, like, especially, like, there was some, like, weird camera angles. And well, not really angles, more like editing choices. I guess that's a better way of putting it. Some of the things that I didn't like was, like, there was some scenes where, like, you could tell, like, the frame rate suddenly went down, and, like, the camera was really shaking. Like, when Jack Driscoll was writing this and spelling out Skull Island, it just looked kind of weird. Like, why did the frame rate drop? Is that supposed to add intensity? You didn't have to do that. Like, I felt like it kind of makes my head hurt, especially, and also when, like, the natives were, like, killing, like, all the people, it kind of made my head hurt, and it was, if you have motion sickness, please don't watch that scene, just, like, skip it, but, yeah. Also, another problem I had was that some characters that seemed kind of interesting got pushed to the wayside. Like, I would have liked to see a little bit more about Jimmy's character, though, who was there with the captain, like, I remember at some point he mentioned that he really wanted to get Ann Driscoll back, but you never actually see them talking in the movie. You would have assumed that they would have had some sort of like conversations or something, and maybe he like grew to like think of her as like an older sister or like a friend or whatever, but you never see that. And he's like so intent on getting her back. It's like, okay, but like you don't know this girl. Who is this? She's just been on the ship for a couple days, but I guess they can imply that they grew closer, but it's like you don't really see anything. I feel like maybe the two of them could have talked at some point. But yeah, side note, some people might know him from different things, but the guy who plays Jimmy, I know him from the AMC series Turn, Washington Spies. Some of you might know him from like the Fantastic Four movie, which we don't talk about, but like, he's a really good actor. I saw him from Turn, Washington Spies. If you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. It's such a good show. I would highly recommend it, especially if you like historical series. It takes some liberties, but it's still a good series. But like, yeah, he's a really good actor. So anyway, back on track. Another thing I hated, the bugs. To this day, I still can't watch that scene. Sorry. It's kind of like the scene in, it reminds me of the spider scene from Minority Report, except whereas those look kind of like, now that I'm older, they just look like kind of stupid. Like, I hate that scene. I still can't watch that scene to this day. It grosses me out. Ugh. Okay, this is gonna be one that's kind of controversial, but like, the representation of other races in this movie, I get that this is supposed to be like a different time, the 1920s, and like, and also when the film came out, it was 2005, so like the representation for like different races on this film are kind of iffy. To be fair, I did like the treatment of the captain and what's his name, Jimmy's relationship, even though the captain dies. But yeah, the other characters, like, it's really kind of complicated for me to talk about because there is supposed to be like an Asian character there, but I kind of feel like they did the stereotypical thing, and it's like, it's not pretty. I don't like it. Also, if you watch, something I noticed when you watch the Kong scene where he's like chained up in like the theater, there you can see like the actors on screen, they're actually, if I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, I think they're supposed to be doing blackface. And I'm not a huge fan of that, but to be fair, like the camera's not really on them for that long, and it's sort of like a quick thing, and historically speaking, they did do that on stage back in the 1920s. I kind of feel like, as uncomfortable as it is, we should still acknowledge that it's there and that it did happen. And yeah, this is not going to get any better the more I talk about it. But anyway, it happened. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to relive it. And I feel like we should understand that, like, yeah, that happened. Let's move on. This is kind of tough for me to talk about, but like, it's something I did notice. And while it did make me feel a bit uncomfortable, I understand that, yeah, that was back in the day. This is now. Let's move on from it. But yeah, kind of a weird way to end this video, but overall, let me just say this. I think King Kong is a really good movie. I think it's probably one of my favorite remake of all time. And it's such a touchstone for our time. Whether or not you like the original or better than the new one, or the new one better than like the original one, it's fine. I can totally see either or. I respect one, but I like one more than the other. But I think that if you have not seen this film, please give it a chance. It's 3 hours long, but it's like, it's worth it. It's worth it, honestly. I could not take my eyes off of it the whole time. But yeah, so this will be the end of the video and the end of my review. I don't want to do a rating system because I hate rating systems, but I'm just gonna give it a watch it rating. It's definitely a really good movie that I think anybody should like start paying attention to, or something that someone should watch. And yeah, so if you like this video, like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. And let me know what you think of the artwork and of this concept, and I will be looking forward to hearing that. So yeah, I also, one other thing, I'm really sorry for all my stuttering. I'm kind of nervous. I've never done anything like this, but if you really like it, just leave me a comment. Subscribe, leave a like, you know, tell me what you like about the film or the video in general. Tell me what you don't like, okay? And with that being said, I hope you have a good night, and I will see you soon. Bye.